Hi, boys and girls. This is Miss Michelle. We are starting a new topic today. We're moving into converting measurement. We are in Chapter 12 in Volume 2, but don't worry. If you're at home and don't have your book, you can work along with me on notebook paper, and we can staple it in your book when you return to school. All right, so today our focus is going to be on converting customary units of length. All right, and our essential question is, how do you change from one unit of length to another? And here is our conversion chart. So it shows us that 1 foot is equivalent or names the same length as 12 inches, that 1 yard is equivalent to 3 feet or also 36 inches, and that 1 mile is equivalent to 1,760 yards, and it's also equivalent to 5,280 feet. So you will need to refer back to this chart when we start doing our work today. I'm going to start with the visual learning situation here on page 490.
How do you change from one unit of length to another? Think about this question during the lesson. Some frogs can jump 11 feet. What are some other ways to describe this distance? Let's work on this together. How do inches and yards compare to feet? Think about this question as you do the activity that comes next.
All right, so let's look at the activity. So I see the 11 feet being represented on the number line. There are 11 increments, so each one of them is a foot. And I see that 12 inches names the same length as 1 foot. So obviously, when we fill it in, we have 11 groups of 12 inches as we fill in our chart, our number line. So 11 groups of 12 would tell us that 11 feet is going to be also equivalent to 132 inches, okay? Now, I also have yards here. So what I notice is 3 feet or 36 inches is equivalent to 1 yard. So I could also name 11 feet using yards. Now, I don't have enough yard or enough length here to do 4 yards. So what I have are 3 yards, 2 feet, or I could name it, I have 3 yards and 24 inches.
Which is greater, 12 inches or 1 yard? 1 yard is greater than 12 inches. The yard is a larger unit of measure than the inch. To change larger units to smaller units, multiply. To convert 11 feet to inches, think 1 foot equals 12 inches, and then find 11 times 12. What is the product? There are 132 inches in 11 feet. Why did you multiply to find inches? You multiply to find inches because you are converting from larger units to smaller units.
And if you notice, it takes many more of the smaller inches to equal the same amount as a foot, right?
To change smaller units to larger units, divide. To convert 11 feet to yards, think 3 feet equals 1 yard, and then determine 11 divided by 3. What is the quotient? 11 divided by 3 equals 3 with remainder 2. What does the remainder represent? The remainder represents the number of feet that are left over. 11 feet equals 3 yards and 2 feet. You now know how to convert customary units of length, such as the inch, foot, and yard.
All right, we're going to stop right there and we're going to work on some problems in the book. So if you don't have your book, just write on notebook paper. And even if you have your book, we're going to be writing the same thing down. So we learned that there's a rule when we're converting. And the rule is if we are moving from larger units to smaller units, we're going to be multiplying, okay? And that's because it takes many, many more smaller units to equal one larger unit. And then if we're moving from smaller units to larger units, we're going to be dividing because it takes a lot less of the larger units to name the same amount of length or weight or capacity as those smaller units, okay? So if you're working in your book, you can just put that at the top of the page, and I would put it at the top of page 491. So our rule that we're going to be using is when we convert larger units to smaller units, we're going to be multiplying. And when we convert smaller to larger units, we're going to be dividing. Okay, so wherever you want to put that. All right, so you can just write these problems. You don't have to copy the problems. Just write the answers in your on your notebook paper if you don't have your book. If you have your book, you're working with me. So let's talk about the first scenario. If you want to convert yards to feet, so yards, if you look at the conversion table, 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. So that means yards are longer, right? So we're going from a larger unit to a smaller unit. So when we go from a larger unit to a smaller unit, the operation we use is multiplication. Okay? Number 2, if you want to convert feet to miles, what operation would you use? Now, I know that feet are a whole lot smaller than a mile without looking. So when we go from feet to miles, we're going from a smaller to a larger unit. So we're going to be dividing because it takes a lot less miles to name the same number of feet. So we're going to be using the division operation. All right. And then let's talk about some tools that you could use to measure length. So I know that one tool that I use all the time is I will use a ruler. Okay. I might use a yardstick. We could use a tape measure. You've seen those before. All right, so there's different things. So we could use rulers. We could use tape measures. I always think about yardsticks because I remember going to the fabric store with my mom when I was little. So the yardsticks were laid out on the counters and the cashiers would measure out the fabric. You might have that done if you go to Hobby Lobby with somebody that sews in your family. So those are a couple of the tools we use to measure length, okay? So I want to look at problems 4 through 8, and I would like everybody to put these on notebook paper. I just want to leave enough room here. Well, actually, yeah, I want to have enough space. So I'm going to put these on notebook paper. All right, so let's switch over, everybody, whether you're working in your book or not, to notebook paper. And let's put that these questions are coming out of page 491. And we're starting with question number 4. All right, so we are converting 9 feet to yards. We want to know how many yards is equivalent or equal to 9 feet. So the first thing that we have to ask ourselves is, are we converting from a larger to a smaller unit of length or vice versa? And I know that yards are longer than feet. My conversion table shows me that there are 3 feet in a yard. So I am going from a smaller unit to a larger unit. And I like to just make a little note here. I'd like to see you guys doing this as well. And my conversion rate is going to be, there are 3 feet in a yard, right? We have to know the basic 3 feet in a yard. So if I look at that, I'm going to take 9 and I'm going to multiply it by 3. I'm sorry, divide. I'm going from larger to smaller. And 9 divided by 3 equals 3. So I see that 9 feet is equal, to 3 yards. Okay? Let's do number 5 together. All right, number 5. They've already slid in a tricky one here. 8 feet blank inches equals blank inches. So we have to know how many inches are in a foot. All right, so if we go back to page 490, we see that there are 12 inches in a foot. So that's our unit rate. And we're going from a larger unit, the 8 foot. It was 7 inches. My goodness, 8 feet, 7 inches. I'm sorry. My phone was buzzing. I got distracted. All right, 8 foot, 7 inches, and we know how many inches it is. So we're really using the larger unit. Inches and inches are the same, so we'll talk about that in just a second, but we're going from larger to smaller. So when we go to larger to smaller units, we are multiplying. All right, there are 12 inches in a foot, so 8 times 12 gives us 96 inches. So the 8 feet is equivalent to 96 inches, but don't forget, we have 7 inches still that are part of the conversion, and 96 plus 7 gives us 103. So we have 103 inches. So the 8 foot would be the 96 inches, and then we still have 7 more. So here's how we would work a problem similar to this. All right, number 6. We're going to be converting 5.5 feet to inches. Okay. And again, I like to see you guys tell me where we're moving. Are we moving from smaller units to larger or larger to smaller? So I do like to see that on your paper. So there are 12 inches in a foot. So I know that I am going from a larger unit, feet, to a smaller unit, inches. So I know that's going to be multiplication. Many more inches to take up 1 foot. All right. And I have 5.5. So let's talk about that. 12 inches in a foot. So the 5 feet would be 5 times 12 inches, right? 12 inches for every one of those foot. That would give me 60 inches. And then I have half a foot. So if 1 foot is 12 inches, half a foot would be 6 inches. So this is where I'm going to get 66 inches is equivalent to 5.5 feet. Okay? All right, if you need to pause me and think about it, if you need to rewind it, that's fine as well. All right, number 7, I'm looking at 288 inches, and I want to know how many yards is that going to be. Okay, so again, I'm looking, it takes a lot of inches to make a yard, 36 inches in a yard, so inches are much smaller than yards, so I'm going from a smaller to a larger unit. I know I'm going to be dividing. I've got to get that unit rate. So there are 36 inches in a yard. I see that from my table on page 490. So I'm dividing by 36, the unit rate, and I'm dividing 288. I am fine if you want to pause and go get your calculator. I know that 288 divided by 36 is 8 exactly. So what that means is there are 8 yards in 288 inches, or their equivalent. 8 yards is the same amount, okay? Number 8, we're looking at 219 inches, and we want to convert that into feet. So again, notice what I do every time. I look to see which is the longer unit. Feet are longer than inches, okay? 1 foot is much longer than 1 inch. So I'm going from a smaller to a larger unit, all right? That means I'm going to be dividing, and then the unit rate, all right? How many inches are in a foot? There are 12 inches in a foot. I see that on my conversion table on page 490. So I'm dividing 219 by 12. If I use my calculator on this one, I get 18.25. That is not how we're going to write our answer, okay? But you can use that to help you. So we're going to set up 12 going into 219, and I'm just going to show you how to use a calculator to do that real quick. I know it goes 18 times, right? And so 18 groups of 12, when I multiply, is 216. So what's left over is 3, okay? So we get 18 remainder 3, all right? So what that means is I have 18 feet and 3 inches. So I have missed my 3 inches here. All right, so what's left over are these inches. I didn't have enough for another foot. So I have 18 feet, 3 inches, okay? So if you use a calculator, we're going to have to get the remainder. We're not doing long division and writing it out as a decimal right now. All right, let's look at number 9. Number 9, we have, we have a table. So let's move into our book again. If you don't have your book, you can just copy. All right, so let's work on the table. All right, so 1 foot is 12 inches. I get that from my conversion table on page 490. So 2 feet would be 24 inches. I have another group of 12, so that means 3 feet is equivalent to 36 inches, and 4 feet would be 48. So we're increasing 12 inches for every foot, and that's because the unit rate is 12 inches equals 1 foot. All right, let's work with yards. So I know that there is, and I'll go back right here, this is the unit rate. Okay, so right here's the unit rate. Looking at my chart on page 490, I know that there are 3 feet in 1 yard. So again, this is the unit rate. This is what we multiply or divide by, right? You heard me using that vocabulary at the beginning. All right. So if 1 yard is 3 feet, 2 yards would be 6 feet, 3 yards would be 9 feet, and 4 yards would be 12 feet, because every time I increase a yard, I'm increasing 3 feet. This is my unit rate increasing, right? All right, let's do a couple more. If you feel like you're ready to move on, I know this video could get lengthy, but this is the deal. I want you guys to stay with me until you feel comfortable moving on. So for example, you might be looking at number 13 and saying that one looks a little scary, or you might look at 14 if you want to just forward to those, okay? All right, let's look at number 11. So I'm going to get a clean sheet here. All right, number 11, I have 3 yards. And I want to see how many inches it equals. All right. Again, I'm looking. I know that there are 12 inches in 1 yard. So I know that this is a smaller unit. So I'm going from a larger to a smaller unit. Sorry, not 12. There's 36 inches in a yard. Larger to smaller. And that's multiplication. I just thinking something else here. All right. So I have 3 yards times 36 inches, because there are 36 inches in a yard. So 3 times 36, if you want to use a calculator, I'm fine with that for today. So 3 times 36 is 108. Just be careful when you're dividing, because we don't want decimals. We want remainders, so 108 inches, right? All right, number 12. We are moving from 324 feet. And we want to find what is equivalent to that in yards. All right, so 1 foot is smaller and shorter in distance than a yard. So we're going from smaller to larger. So we're going to be using division. All right, and there are 3 feet in a yard. So my unit rate is 3 feet per yard. I'm going to divide, and I have 324. All right, so again, if I take my calculator, 324 divided by 3, I get 108. There's no decimal remainder there, so I'm just going to write my answer, 108. All right, number 13. We have 2 2/3 miles. And we want to know how many feet that equals. All right, so I know that there are 5,280 feet in a mile. All right, and a mile is longer, all right, than feet, a lot longer. So when we go from larger to smaller, we're multiplying, and 1 mile is 5,280 feet, and we have 2 2/3. All right, if we had our Texas Instrument calculators, this would be super easy. We could just put in and multiply a fraction. We don't. So I'm going to change this. So I have, 3 times 2, 6, 7, 8. I have 8/3 times 5,280 times 1. Don't forget, we have to have 2 fractions and able to be able to multiply. But we can use our calculator to help us. So 8 times 5,280 is 42,240 thirds. All right, improper fractions. So we just divide 42,240 by 3, and we get, it goes in at equally 14,080 times. Wow. See how useful a calculator can be? But we can show our work, boys and girls, using a calculator. So my answer is 14,080 feet is equivalent to 2 2/3 miles. All right, let's look at number 14. Number 14, we have 56 feet, and we want to know what that equals in yards. And since I see that there are some feet left over, I know that there's going to be a remainder when I work this problem, right? All right, let's talk about length. So we're working yards and feet. So feet are smaller than yards because it takes 3 feet to name the same length as 1 yard. So we're going from smaller to larger units. So that is division. And there are 3 feet in a yard. So we're dividing 56 by 3. So let me show you what happens. When I divide 56 by 3, I don't get an even number. So it would benefit me to just set it up. I know that it goes 18 times with something left over, and I know that because the whole number part of my answer is 18. And I know that 18 times 3 then, just using my calculator, is 54. So this is how I quickly can show my work, but using the calculator, I see that there's 2 left over. So I know 56 feet is equivalent to 18 yards with 2 feet left over because you don't have enough to make another group of 3. All right, we're going to do 2 more together. All right, number 15, we're going to be dividing or taking 12.5 feet. And we're going to see how many inches that equals. Okay, so this is going to be very similar to the work we had to do in number 13 because we just have a 4-function calculator. All right, so first of all, 12.5, I forgot my unit. It was feet. So feet are longer than inches. There's 12 inches in a foot. So I'm going from larger to smaller unit. And that means I'm going to be multiplying the unit rate. There are 12 inches in 1 foot. And I have 12.5 feet. All right, so 12.5 feet. Hang on, I just dropped my book. All right, so I'm going to have to change this to a fraction. 2 times 12 is 24 plus 1. I have 25 halves. Times 12 over 1. Again, I have to have 2 fractions. Since we're using my calculator, this makes it pretty easy to multiply those numerators. 25 times 12 is 300. 2 times 1 is 2. And 300 divided by 2 is 150. So I have 150 inches. Another way we could have worked this is we could have said we have 12 groups of 12. That gives us 144 inches for the 12 feet, right? Half a foot is 6 inches. We could look at it this way and get our 150. So that would be an alternative way to solve that one. All right, and then we have number 16 that we're going to talk about. All right, in number 16, we have 6 inches, and we want to see how many feet that equals. All right, so we're going from inches to feet. Inches are smaller than feet. As a matter of fact, there are 12 inches in a foot. So we are going to be dividing. And there's 12 inches in a foot. So we're dividing by that unit rate. And we're dividing 6 divided by 12. So guys, we could write this division as a fraction. We know it's going to be less than 1 whole, and 6/12 equals 1/2. So 6 inches is half a foot. And that kind of makes sense to me if I think about it with number sense. 12 inches is 1 foot, so 6 inches would be half a foot. All right, the last section in your book has us doing some comparisons. So in order to be able to compare, we have to convert the measurements, right? So let's just look at that last section real quick. Number 17, we're looking at 100 feet and we're comparing it to 3 yards. All right, so when I do my comparison, I need to convert them to one or the other, right? So I am thinking I could do this. I could think 100 feet equals blank yards. Okay, let's just go out here and see what 100 feet equals. All right, so foot to yards, going smaller unit to larger. So I'm going to be dividing. There are 3 yards in a foot. So 100 divided by 3. So I can use my calculator. 100 divided by 3 equals 33. And then notice I've got some remainder left over. So I can go ahead and say 3 goes into 100 33 times. 33 times 100, or 33 times 3 is 99. So I have 1 left over, right? So really, 100 feet equals 33 yards and 1 foot. So what that tells me is that 100 feet is a little bit longer because it's really 33, we could even say, and 1/3 yards, right? So it's 1/3 of a yard longer. Okay, let's look at number 18. We're going to do the same thing here. We have 74 inches, and we want to know, is it less than, greater, or equal to 2 yards, 2 inches? So again, why don't we just grab this 74 inches and see how many yards it equals, right? So 74 inches. Inches are smaller than yards. So we're going from smaller units to larger. So we're going to be dividing. And there are 36 inches in a yard. So we have 74 divided by 36. 74 divided by 36 equals 2. And I see a remainder, so I know that's going to be a remainder, so I'm going to slide over and help myself here. So I know it goes 2 times. 36 times 2 is 72. So boys and girls, I have a remainder of 2. So think about what that remainder means. It means I have 2 yards with 2 of these inches left over. So it equals 2 yards, 2 inches. So this is equal. Okay, let's do one more. And then you can work on your practice buddy. 19, we have 5,200 feet. And we want to know, is it less than, greater than, or equal to 1 mile, 40 inches? Okay, so let's take 5,200 feet And let's see how many miles this is. Okay. So I'm going from smaller to larger. And we have 1,000, let's see. We have 1,760 feet in a mile. So that's our unit rate. And I have 5,200 feet. So we can use our calculator to help us. 5,200 divided by 1,060. I get 2, and I'm going to have a remainder. So I'm just going to slide out to the side here. Set it up just to show my work, boys and girls. So we know it's going to be 2 times. So 1,760 times 2, 3,520. So when I subtract, I have a remainder of 1,680. So I have, it's going to equal 2 miles, right? With 1,680 inches left over. Right? So if this is 2 miles, 1,680 inches, then it is going to be greater than 1 mile, 40 inches. All right, let me make sure I've done that one right. Something's looking funny to me. Going from smaller to larger, just double checking my work. So I am dividing the unit rate. There are 1,760. Oh man, I used the wrong conversion rate. All right, go back. My bad. Yep, I just thought that looked funny. I used the wrong conversion rate. I used the conversion rate for yards. All right, so let me go back. For feet, there are 5,280 feet in a mile. And we're going from smaller to larger, so we're dividing. So what I see, 5,200, I know it's going to be less than 1. Is 5,280 is the divisor. I get 98 hundredths of a mile. 98 hundredths of a mile. I am going to use a decimal there because that's less than 1, right? When I divide a smaller number by a larger number, I get 98 hundredths. And I just rounded to the nearest hundred. So guys, 5,280 feet is 98 hundredths of a mile. So when I compare, 98 hundredths of a mile is less than. All right, Miss Purcell used the wrong conversion there. So that's where my problems were. All right, happens to the best of us, right? All right, so boys and girls, you have a practice buddy. I know this was a very long video. I hope you didn't watch the whole thing. All right, have a great day and good luck on your practice buddy. You may use a calculator, but just like me, you've got to show your work.